Well, there are a lot of games that have playoff implications, and we've quantified that here via Sportsline on the Inside the Lines team. Of course, a lot of head-to-head matchups here as well, current with a win, with a loss. We're going to break it all down for you right now on HQ. Mid versus mid. It's 6-6 versus 6 and 6.
That's nice of you.
It is nice of me. I'm trying to. Yeah,
I mean, these are two teams that got booed off their own home field last week.
Yeah, they really did. So I'm trying to be Switzerland and play down the line here. But in terms of the numbers, are we seeing something other than down the line? Is there a preferable team that come out of this thing here when it comes to the North?
I mean, when you think about the AFC North, both of these teams, their only chance really to make the playoffs is win the division. They're both really out of that wild card contention from a numbers standpoint. So right now they basically have the full pie of winning the division. It's Steelers versus Ravens. So with a win, either of these teams go from around that 50% and jump up to a 70% chance. If you win this game, you're now just in the driver's seat, in control to take the division. Now, if they end up splitting, it's not that deep, but it is the opportunity to have two head-to-heads over these teams is going to be massive for you. So that's why you see such a jump and such a swing with a win and loss to win the division. Obviously, these head-to-heads will be massive because they're really the only two we're looking at to come out of this division here.
When you talk about mid versus mid, looking at these two teams, I mean, thank you for laying out all the numbers, Mackenzie, but you're talking about two quarterbacks who have played at MVP calibers for most of their career that aren't playing that way right now. Obviously, a lot of that is due to injury, but when healthy, neither Aaron Rodgers or Lamar Jackson have played particularly well. The run game has not really been a factor for either team. I mean, I'm especially disappointed with the Ravens because you've got Derrick Henry, who is he's still got the juice. He can still run the ball effectively. I know he had some fumbling issues at the beginning of the season, and I'm not sure if that scared them away from using him as much as he's used to being used. But also you have to factor in some of the offensive line play as a contributor to that as well. And then you look at both of these defenses. I mean, the steel curtain isn't really the steel curtain anymore. It's more like a linen curtain, if you will. And then you look at the Baltimore Ravens. We've been asking, begging, where has this Ravens defense been all season long? Roquan Smith, we want to see him step up. Guys like Marlon Humphrey, we've got Kyle Hamilton. They've got the players to do it. They just haven't risen to the occasion. And both of these teams are sitting here with the records that they have. So when I watch this matchup tonight, which team is going to play better? Which team is just going to play with more of a sense of urgency, looking at this as a potential playoff elimination game? And ultimately, which quarterback is going to play better? I mean, again, both of them have been banged up. Neither have played their best football. I mean, I would think that Lamar Jackson has the better chance of going out and having a good performance and leading his team to a victory tonight. But there have been a lot of questions and concerns about what is really wrong with Lamar Jackson. Because, again, when he's healthy out there, he just doesn't look like the same MVP caliber Lamar Jackson.
We also have to talk about, as far as questions and concerns, TJ Watt. It feels like a necessary character in here. Now, there are not many players outside of quarterbacks that can really move the needle in a model, depending on if you're healthy or not. TJ Watt is one of them, right? The Ravens right now are around a 62% chance to win this game. If he is out or seriously limited, that goes to a 70% chance. Like, there is this huge difference when he is healthy. Now, that's different than just being on the field, because we saw last year he was almost ineffective when he was there, but he wasn't really himself. He couldn't stop the run at all. So the difference of him being here and not being here could be big for the Steelers' playoff chances in general. It's obviously huge for this game, but interesting to have a player like him outside of quarterbacks that can really move the needle in the model.
Be a difference maker, a tangible difference maker there. Let's go from one game on CBS to another, which is
Steelers Nation Wire, gather in. Because what we just heard on CBS Sports HQ about the AFC North and this mid versus mid label for Steelers versus Ravens is exactly the kind of outside noise that either breaks a team or lights a fire under an entire city. And if there's one thing history keeps proving over and over again, it's this. When the rest of the NFL counts Pittsburgh out, that's usually when the Steelers are the most dangerous. They're sitting there on national TV talking about how both teams are 6-6, how their only chance is to win the division, how neither Aaron Rodgers nor Lamar Jackson is playing at an MVP level, how the run games have disappeared, how the steel curtain supposedly turned into a linen curtain, and how everyone's just waiting to see which one of these teams finally collapses. But what they're not saying, and what we see because we live this every week, is that in a messy AFC North, in a season where no one looks unbeatable, This is exactly the type of chaotic environment where Pittsburgh has always found a way to survive, steal a game nobody expects, and punch their ticket when everyone else is doing playoff math on graphics and percentages instead of lining up and hitting somebody in the mouth. They're up there talking about models, about playoff odds jumping from 50% to 70% with a win, about how this matchup is basically a divisional coin flip that decides who gets to drive the AFC North bus the rest of the way. And buried in all that mid versus mid talk, there was one thing that slipped out that tells you everything you need to know about how the people who build those models really see the Steelers. When TJ Watt is right, when he is healthy and truly himself, he moves the needle like a superstar quarterback. They literally said if he's out or limited, the Ravens' win probability jumps way up. If he's himself, suddenly it's almost a straight-up fight again. That's not how they treat a linen curtain. That's how they treat a team that still terrifies people when its stars are on the field. That's fear disguised as analysis. Let's talk about that, because people are acting like the Steelers are some lost franchise stumbling around in the dark. Aaron Rodgers hasn't been at peak MVP level, that's true, and nobody is pretending he has. But even in a season where the offense has been clunky, where the run game never fully found its identity, where drives stall and the calls get conservative, Rodgers still brings something this team hasn't had in a long time: late-game belief. You can feel it every time the ball is in his hands in a one-score game in the fourth quarter. Defensive coordinators still change how they call a game because of his presence. Safeties cheat deeper. Corners hesitate to junk. And for as much as the talking heads love to say he's not the same guy, they never sound comfortable betting against him in a big divisional spot. And that's before you even factor in the weapons around him. DK Metcalf gives this offense a real alpha on the outside, a guy who can win on a slant, win on a go, and win on a ball that isn't even thrown perfectly. Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell give you dual threat options who can hurt people out of the backfield if the staff leans into it. Pat Freiermuth is still one of the most reliable security blankets in the middle of the field when you actually feature him. So yeah, the national narrative is stale offense, dink and dunk, not physical enough, but the pieces to flip that script are already in the building. It's not like this roster is empty. It's that the timing, the confidence, and the urgency haven't lined up yet. And that's exactly why a night like Steelers versus Ravens in December can be a season reset button. Now, about this defense they tried to downgrade into a joke with that linen curtain line. Everyone knows it hasn't been up to the old standard. That's obvious. There have been missed tackles, blown coverages, games where the opponent dictated everything at the line of scrimmage. But let's not pretend the Steelers are rolling out no names. You still have TJ Watt, one of the most feared defensive players in the sport, a guy who coordinators design game plans around every single week. You've got Patrick Queen, who knows the Baltimore offense inside and out and brings range and attitude to the middle of the field. You've got emerging pieces like Nick Herberg flashing in big moments, young linemen learning how to win consistently up front, and veterans in the secondary who know how to bait quarterbacks into the mistakes that flip close games. The modelers said it themselves. TJ Watt is one of the rare non-quarterbacks who actually changes the math by just being himself. That means this isn't some soft, washed-up unit. It means that the Steelers clean up the details, gap discipline, tackling, communication on the back end. They're one good defensive performance away from reminding people that the name Pittsburgh Steelers still means something on that side of the ball. And the wild part is, the numbers people basically admitted that the AFC North is sitting here on a silver platter. They literally said it's Steelers versus Ravens for the division. Their only real shot to get in is to win the North. This game swings both teams from around 50% to 70% with a win. That's not nothing. That means as ugly and frustrating as the season has felt, as much as fans have wanted to scream about the play calling, the lack of a consistent run game, the missed chances against teams they should have beaten, everything is still in front of them. You've got a Ravens team that also hasn't looked like itself, a team that brought in Derrick Henry and still hasn't truly found that punishing, identity-defining run game they envisioned. Lamar Jackson is banged up, and even when he's played, he hasn't consistently looked like the unstoppable MVP version everyone remembers. Their defense hasn't been the suffocating, flying-around unit the fan base expected when they saw all those big names. And that's why you heard on HQ pure frustration. Where's the Ravens defense we were promised? Where's Roquan Smith taking over games? Where are all those stars? That's not how you talk about a juggernaut. That's how you talk about a vulnerable rival. So picture this from a Steelers Nation perspective. You've got a division that's not being run away with. You've got a Ravens team that's wobbling, a Bengals team that's been inconsistent all year, and a Browns team that can't seem to find offensive stability. You've got national analysts calling Steelers versus Ravens mid versus mid, like it's just a coin flip of disappointment. And in the middle of all of that, you've got one of the most proud franchises in football being told by the rest of the country, you're old, you're stale, your defense isn't scary, your quarterback isn't special anymore, and your best non-quarterback is the only reason the numbers even respect you. That is rocket fuel in a locker room like Pittsburgh's, with veterans who have heard the boos at home, who felt what it's like to walk off that field after a bad loss and know the fan base is simmering. That is exactly when a team either packs it in or decides they're tired of being a talking point and ready to become a problem. And here's the thing that never shows up on the charts: pride. Playoff odds can't measure what happens when a player like TJ Watt decides this is his game to wreck. They can't measure what happens when Aaron Rodgers, on a national stage, hears all week that Lamar has the better shot at stepping up and decides he's not going to let another quarterback own the moment in his stadium. They don't account for what happens when a physical offensive line, even with injuries and reshuffling, takes all the criticism about not being able to run the ball and turns it into 60 minutes of finishing blocks and leaning on people. They don't quantify what it means for a fan base like Steelers Nation to feel like its team is being disrespected and to turn Acrisure into a cauldron when everything is on the line. That's the human part of football they always forget when they reduce everything to mid versus mid and color-coded graphics. So yeah, if you listen to that segment, you heard a lot of doubt about Pittsburgh. You heard people wondering what's really left here, if the Rodgers experiment is worth it, if the defense can still be trusted, if the AFC North is just a bunch of flawed teams pretending to be contenders. But if you listen a little closer, you also heard something else. You heard them admit that the entire division is basically down to Steelers versus Ravens, that this matchup tonight is a pseudo-elimination game, and that one guy in black and gold, TJ Watt, has the kind of power to swing the whole thing back in Pittsburgh's favor just by being himself. You heard concern. You heard worry. You heard the kind of nervous respect that comes from knowing that even in a messy year, even when things look bleak, there are certain organizations you never fully bury until the math says 0 and the clock hits all zeros too. Steelers Nation, this is the moment where you decide what story you believe. You can buy into the narrative that this team is cooked, that the window is shut, that the best days are behind them, and 6-6 is who they really are. Or you can look at the standings, look at the division, look at the schedule, and realize they are still right in the thick of everything, with a chance to take control against their biggest rival in a game that swings the entire AFC North. You can listen to people calling your defense a linen curtain, or you can remember all the Sundays you watched that logo on the helmet stand for toughness and resilience, and decide that you're not ready to let some national show write the obituary on this season. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you still believe this team can make that run, take this division, and shut up everybody talking about mid versus mid? Do you think Rodgers and this offense can finally put it together and the defense can rise back to the standard with Watt leading the way? Drop your thoughts in the comments, tell me where your belief level is right now, and what you think has to change for the Steelers to flip this story. And if you're riding with Steelers Nation Wire through all of it, the highs, the lows, the noise, the doubt, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter of this wild season. This isn't over, not by a long shot.